Welcome to another episode of the Career Talks podcast. I'm your host, Orlando Haynes. Each and every week, I try to bring you amazing guests, which I do. It's just whether it's each and every week. There are some breaks, but the guests are absolutely amazing. And today is no different. You see, I'm here on the midday, typically on the evening, but I had to pivot for this amazing guest today. So if you've seen the promotions, you know who I'm talking to. She's no stranger to the career development, multi-generational space. But before we get started, make sure you're subscribing to the podcast across Apple, Spotify, and YouTube. So I've met Lindsey Pollock over 3 years ago. And I want to say thank you first by myself, and then I'll bring her on and say the same thing. But she was gracious enough to, when I was doing a podcast, maybe 6 months into a year, and she said yes. And ever since then, I've been a fan of her work and how she's dynamically taken the lead on multi-generational conversations around the workplace. But she is a New York Times bestselling author and a multi-generational expert. I like to bring back, after 3 years, my friend, Ms. Lindsey Pollock. How are you?
So good to be back, Orlando. Thanks for having me. Thanks for all your support.
No, appreciate you. So definitely, again, just remembering 3 years ago, we had a quick, I'll jog your memory. We had a call. You were gracious enough to give me about 30 minutes of your time then to talk about, what's the premise of the podcast, what's the goal, and then we had a discussion there. So again, great to, I would say 360 moment to where it's 3 years later. I should have marked the date to see if the date was close, but either way, good to have you back and seeing what you've been doing in the space. So appreciate you once again.
Thank you so much. Really happy to be here, and congrats on keeping it going for so long.
Thank you. So share with the folks who may not know your backstory, your experience, and what you do within this space.
Sure. My name is Lindsey Pollock. I'm based in New York. I've been doing this work for more than 20 years. I started as a college campus speaker in the early 2000s, wrote my first book, Getting from College to Career, kind of based on what I wish I had known when I was starting my career. And that book came out originally in 2007 and is now in its third edition, which is kind of wild. And since then, I've written 3 additional books, really kind of on the career journey. My second book was called Becoming the Boss, about managing people for the first time. And I got really, really interested in the subject of generational differences in the workplace. So I've started to deep dive on that topic for about the past 10 years, wrote a book called The Remix, and then one called Recalculating, because I really think succeeding in this moment in time is not just about thinking about yourself and getting along with your peers, but really understanding how to work with people of all different ages. We're a 5-generation workplace for the first time in history. People are going to be working a lot longer into their careers. I personally was getting older and feeling the differences a little bit more. So I'm really interested in helping people succeed in their careers and sharing secrets and strategies, but in particular, really eager to embrace all of the different ages of people in the global workforce.
Love it. So here's an official copy of the book. Lindsey has always been gracious enough to send me a copy. As I'm working through it, there are some things that I pulled out to definitely want to dive into for sure. And so, but let me first ask you, what made you write a 3rd edition? Something in the market you're seeing as you speak all over the world. What are you seeing in the careers, in the college space that said, okay, I need to go back because there's still a gap of information that they're missing?
Yeah, I really think about writing books when I hear similar things over and over again when I'm out speaking. Speaking is my primary business, so I'll be on college campuses, grad school campuses, corporations, law firms, nonprofits. And what I was hearing from students was just how much had changed, particularly since the pandemic, no surprise, about the job search. And so when I start to hear those questions, how do we use AI? What has happened since the pandemic that's different? Obviously, a lot more hybrid and virtual opportunities. Social media has taken kind of a different turn than maybe 10 years ago. So the ideas really come from the audiences and the questions that they're asking. And I think really since the pandemic, everything has changed. People's mindsets have changed. I'll give you just one example. I don't think I talked about self-care or mental well-being in my first 2 editions of the book, which I'm kind of embarrassed about, but I can't imagine writing a job search book today without those topics. So different issues kind of come to the fore. So a lot has changed, but a lot has also stayed the same about building your personal brand, tapping into your professional relationships, being prepared for interviews. So it was really interesting to see what has completely changed and then what has stayed almost exactly the same.
Yep, you made a great point, because I noticed that letter in the chapters that you spoke about self-care, and then the titles, the different titles in the topics, like you said, were still the same, but the content obviously is different. New day, new age, technology advancements, etc. So one of the things that I pulled out, which I absolutely love, was it said, "Stop being a student, start being a professional." Talk to us about that when you're sharing that with students, because they're probably like, "What do you mean I have no work experience? What do you mean I want to be a professional?" Yeah.
So I love that tip. And that's been in all 3 editions of the book, but in very different ways. So when you're a student, that's what you're focused on: getting grades, going to class, being part of clubs and activities. And that's great, and enjoy all of it. But there's a mindset shift that needs to happen to get a job. And what that means is to, for instance, you might not be using email a lot, but you're going to have to communicate by email if you want to be in the professional marketplace. You might not have felt any reason to be on LinkedIn, but that's where professionals are and interact and engage and connect. So that's where you want to be. Going to a company information session or a job fair, you want to show up as a professional in how you dress and how you speak and making eye contact. So it's really making the choice to see yourself as a professional. And to answer the question that you kind of brought up, when people say, I don't have any professional experience, I take a really broad view of experience. It doesn't have to be paid. It doesn't have to be 9 to 5. If you are the president of a club, if you are very active in community service, if you've taken on a leadership role in your classes, to me, all of that counts as experience. You just have to choose to put it in the language of professionalism and decide to call it experience. Nobody's going to give you a magic wand. You have to make that choice yourself.
There's something else you mentioned too that said, "Get carded." Walk us through that.
So this is a little controversial. I still believe in old-fashioned business cards. I have some here on my desk that I got at a recent conference. If you want to be in the professional world, you have to have the tools of the professional world. And online, that's certainly LinkedIn. But I'm seeing still students carrying business cards. Many undergraduate business programs will give them to students if they want them. And, a lot of people don't use them anymore. But if you're going to be at a job fair, if you're going to be at a professional networking event, and a recruiter or an alum of your school hands you a business card, I think you should still hand one back. And I wasn't sure if this was still the thing to do. It certainly was back in 2007. And so I asked recruiters and college career services professionals and students themselves, do you think you still need business cards? And about half said yes and half said no. So I thought, well, what am I going to do about it? And I thought, if half the people you meet are going to give you a business card, why would you want to miss out on that opportunity to stand out? So they don't have to be expensive. They don't have to be fancy. But I think it's still worthwhile to carry business cards. Take or leave the advice. But to me, it's that little extra step of professionalism that still can really matter, particularly if you're going into a more traditional field like insurance or finance or accounting, marketing. Maybe not so much if you're designing video games or a programmer, but in some areas more than others, I think it's still very relevant.
Yeah. So as I travel through North America in 10 different university career fairs in my 9 to 5, I do see some still do the business cards. And I'm always like little geeked, like, oh, this is cool. So I look at, if you have the QR code on there, what is it saying as far as your major, what year are you in? So I see different variations and I'm like, oh, this is really cool. And so as they're handing me their physical resume, you'll see the paper clip at the top with the business card. I've seen it more recently from, I would say the master's program students. But either way, I've seen it on both sides. And I still think, hey, if you're going to do it. You're not going to go wrong either way. So why not put in the extra effort? Like I said, it'll stand out when you have that physical stack. that little thin card will stand out and be like, okay, who's this person again? So that's a great point. You also talked about the networking piece, which I see. And again, it's funny. And I'm going to jump to another one too, because the verbiage you use is something I'm about to put out an ebook on it. But the networking piece, and I talk to students as at the career fairs. So I'm always switching to say, okay, here's what you need to think about just universally, no matter which company you decide to land with, is the networking piece. What shifted from the second book to now that you see is more relevant for the students today?
I'm curious if you hear this, but there seems to be some dislike of the word networking. Maybe it feels schmoozy or it doesn't feel authentic. I use it, but a lot of students tell me that they don't like that word. So I really try to just call it relationship building or making friends, or, building your professional contacts and maintaining them. I think the idea that you would go to a conference and kind of meet 100 people just doesn't feel authentic. And I also think that when you're not going to be in person with a lot of people, it's a little bit different. So I call the section on networking talk, listen, repeat, because I think all of them are really important. Get comfortable just talking to people about your career. And it doesn't have to be a formal recruiter, just the way that you would talk about TV shows or where you got your hair cut or where you're going for dinner over the weekend. Make this part of your normal conversation. And by being a professional, you realize that in the professional world, we do talk about our jobs and careers all the time. So get in that habit. Listen means you don't have to be talking about yourself all the time. You want to help other people. You want to be a supporter of other people. So asking people about their careers and listening is a really important piece. Reid Hoffman, one of the founders of LinkedIn, said, help people, that's networking, right? That's all it's about. And then repeat is you've got to keep doing this forever. The friends you meet in college, the alums that you meet, the people in your first job, second job, this is kind of a lifelong endeavor, just like having personal relationships. It's not really different in the professional world. So I try to take the sort of scariness of networking away from it and just say whether it happens over text message or happens on LinkedIn or happens in WhatsApp or wherever, it's just about building relationships, talking, listening, and repeating.
Yeah, I 100% agree with that. And I think in the landscape of their curriculum, there should be something that teaches them, more communication in that, whether it's you title it building relationships or networking space, so they're more comfortable, right? Because I would think for the most part, the first time they're exposed to multiple, companies is a career fair, and that can be overwhelming for some. And you can tell the difference between the ones that are more comfortable in their skin, the ones that are a little more introverted as they're trying to work through that. So that would be a good class for, like, it's almost mandated for every student to go through. Learn how to communicate in a sea of professionals. This way, you're doing that rinse and repeat. I think you mentioned that in your book too, where you not so much a pitch, but you're just comfortable talking about various topics. You're just comfortable communicating with other professionals. And so that's a great thing too. This one, I really wanted you to unpack. It says, give yourself an edge. The 5 minute stand up. Do a 5 minute stand up. Break that down.
So the whole section you're referring to is about little extras, right? They're not required. They're just some things to try. And over the years as a career coach and advisor, I just find myself giving people the advice to experiment. Just try something different. If you're in a rut, if you're not sure what you want to do, go try something. And I think learning how to be a better speaker and to be more resilient is always going to be powerful. And a student told me that she had done one of those classes where you learn stand-up comedy and you have to end up doing a 5-minute set at a comedy club. And she said it taught her to be less afraid. It taught her to, say some jokes are going to work, some aren't, to be laughed at, to take herself less seriously, to fail, all of that were such good lessons for your career, because I think of the long game in a career. This is not a sprint. This is a marathon, and you're going to have highs and lows. And the more you can kind of laugh at yourself and be comfortable with that, the better. So I think the dual bonus of doing a little bit of stand-up is you get a little public speaking training, which is always going to be positive for career fairs and job interviews and networking. But you also kind of learn to take yourself a little bit less seriously and give something a shot. And I think that that's a really good lesson.
So sort of a improv class they took to.
Yeah, improv class. Just do something you've never done before. Give it a try. What's the worst that can happen? Just show that everything that you try is not life or death.
Love it. Let me ask you this, and if you have an opposing viewpoint or a different thought process in this. When I sometimes talk to the students, specifically around career fairs, we see them wandering, we see them in packs, and I'm like, okay, guys, so here's a bit of a tip that I would say for you to kind of take on is, once you do the initial research, and first of all, do the initial research, classes can be heavy and it can get, time can be short. But if you do the initial research and really target the companies that specialize in what you're looking for, that's where you want to maximize that time. So if there's 100 employers there, go after the top 20 that match what you're looking for. And I say at the end of that, go ahead and leave, because they at some point they get to wander, the energy gets low, they're in packs. And we see that as employers, and we're trying to pull teeth and saying, hey guys, come on over, talk to us. What do you think about that as a strategy versus, hey, go hit all 100 and see what lands?
Ooh, I totally agree with you. And you're the recruiter in that situation. So you are totally the expert. Career fairs are weird, right? It's a very awkward, not natural situation. And so I agree with you. You have to go in with a strategy. And what's the point of walking up to a company you've never heard of and saying, what do you guys do? That to me just doesn't really serve any purpose. So you look at the list, you pick the companies you want to talk to, you do your homework so that you can walk up and say, Orlando, I'm really interested in your company. I saw that you do this. I'd love to hear more about that. That's going to be 100 times more valuable than walking up to somebody you've never heard of. So I totally agree about the research and being very, very targeted in your approach. The second thing I will say is, I've heard, and I'd love for you to validate this, it's not just what you say, it's how you say it. To your point, if your face is in your phone or you're talking with friends online, that's not going to serve you well. Be alert, walk up with a smile on your face, make eye contact, have a strong handshake. One recruiter said she draws little eyeballs and a smiley face on the resumes of people who made eye contact, because it's actually quite unique to be that present and forthcoming. So I think the human piece, that recruiters are people and would like eye contact and would like to have a real conversation. Sometimes we think we're robots going to each booth, but I think that human piece is really important. So I'd love to hear from you, but I couldn't agree more about a targeted approach.
Yeah, you hit the nail right on the head. I tell them, if as the candidate, if you're initiating the contact with the employer, that excites us. That makes us energized, because you also got to think we're giving the same pitch to you about what we do. Here are products and services and opportunities probably 200 times plus, depending on how many students are in there. So we get a little kind of worn out repeating the same stuff, but to know that, and especially if we're having to like grab you out the audience, like, hey, come on, talk to us. If you're initiating that contact with that same energy you explained, it's a completely different shift, and the conversation is more in depth. We'll spend more time with that student because they've already come with a like we talked about, a game plan, and the conversation is different because of their questions too. They did the prep work in the beginning, and so that becomes a more exciting. And I do the check mark. So I take a resume, I do a check mark. That's my my little note, and I tell the people that are with me, partners and some of the business leaders, like, hey, just go ahead and write a little note. The ones that are blank we can get to, but let's prioritize the ones that we think will be a real fit for that. So great that we're on the same path on that. That's exciting to know. So when you think about some of the common mistakes that the students are still making, so as you were asking, these different students, so students were coming up to you and saying this, what are you seeing still is the biggest, mistake that students need to prepare for or improve on, rather?
The same one I see today that I saw back in 2007 that I did myself, which is doing nothing, which is waiting and hoping and thinking and wondering and worrying and not doing anything. So students will come up and say, I'm not sure what job to apply for. I'm like, just do it. Just go. Show up to the job fair, apply for the jobs, go to the networking event. Doesn't work out, it doesn't work out. But I think I thought myself that if I sat in my dorm room and thought really hard, it would somehow magically happen. And it's not true. You've got to get out there. You've got to apply for jobs. You've got to show up. You've got to have conversations. You've got to do internships and see if you like them or if you don't like them, and sort of go in with the mindset that it's about experimentation, and some things are going to work, some aren't. Some people are going to say no to networking requests. Some people are going to say yes. But if you don't ask, you'll never know. So I think just taking action every single day and getting out of your own way is probably the most important step to take and the biggest mistake people make.
Love it. I love saying take immediate massive action or take imperfect action.
Yeah,
right. Just move forward. Yep. So you also talked about in the book, the follow-up. And I don't see that happening as much. And so where's that gap? Which kind of goes with what you said about the email, right? Now you have to communicate through email, whether it be a LinkedIn message or a professional email. But I think students for the most in a large scale are not doing the follow-up. How can you best walk them through that from nuggets from the book?
I call it persist without being a pest, which is kind of the secret, is not to follow up too aggressively. It's just really common that if you send an email to somebody or if you connect on LinkedIn, they don't see it. They're busy. They're traveling. They haven't checked their email. There are 100 million reasons. I do it myself where something just falls through the cracks. So to me, if you sent a message and nothing happened, give it a week, maybe 2 weeks, and then reach out again as if you never reached out. Just give people the benefit of the doubt that they didn't see the message. If you have coffee with somebody, if somebody does you a favor, if you meet a recruiter at a job fair who says, here's my card, keep in touch, believe them that they want you to keep in touch and follow up. One of my little tricks of the trade is, let's say I came up to your booth at a job fair and you said, I'm really interested in talking to you, here's my card. I would say, great, what's the best way to reach you? And when are you available? So that you might say, oh, actually, I'm going on vacation for 2 weeks, don't contact. Or I never check my email, please leave me a voicemail, even though nobody does voicemail. Or yes, you can text me, that's totally appropriate. So sometimes you can get instructions from people on how to do it. So always follow up. And then I think if you still don't hear back the second time, you wait another week or two and try one last time, but try differently. So if you tried email, maybe contact them on LinkedIn. Anything that you can do to try 3 times and then 3 strikes and you're out. I think more than that is very aggressive and something to maybe be cautious of. So give it a try. The worst thing people can say is no. And I think the final piece of follow-up is just to keep it short. You don't have to write a huge, long thing. You just say, it was so great to meet you. Would love to connect for 15 minutes. Could we schedule a phone call? You don't want to give people your life story or send your resume before somebody has asked for it. But again, just like action, the worst someone can say is no. Give it a shot.
What would you say as far as the follow-up on the second or third messaging? How should that sound if it's been, you feel you've been ghosted, but it's like, okay, this is my 3rd attempt. How can I spice it up, but still be short? And maybe that something in that messaging is the one that, almost like a hook, like an advertisement hook. Is there anything that could be added that can spice up that messaging?
Yes, I would never call out that it's the 3rd attempt. I would never say, hey, Orlando, I haven't heard back from you twice, or I reached out to you and I didn't hear back from you. So I would not do that. That shames the other person. What I would say is add value. So instead of saying, this is my 3rd attempt, I would say, I saw this article and thought you would like it. By the way, I'd really be interested in having a phone call with you. So try to do something, give a compliment. Maybe you saw them post something on LinkedIn that appealed to you. Send them an article you think would be valuable. Mention something you saw about their company in the news, as long as it was positive. Don't say, I saw you had layoffs. But anything that adds a little bit of value to the conversation, and or try a different method. So if you tried email the first time, maybe you try contacting them through LinkedIn or commenting on one of their posts. But again, don't go too far in terms of bothering somebody. My friend Steve Dalton, who wrote the book, The 2-Hour Job Search, he says, let's say you reach out to 10 people for networking and 2 get back to you. He said those 2 who get back to you will be worth the other 8 combined because they've said yes. So don't get too caught up in one person getting back to you, which is why you have to have a lot of irons in the fire. If you apply to one job or you think one networking connection is going to be, the most important in the world, you're just kind of shooting yourself in the foot. So have a lot of things going on so that one person's response doesn't make or break you.
Love that. So just to recap, folks, make sure your third and final message doesn't say, hey, this is my third and final message. I saw this article on layoffs that you guys are having. Just wanted to make sure. Am I still, in the running?
All the jokes in one category.
Right. And everything is like X, X, X. You just blew it up. So you mentioned earlier about personal branding, which I think, and as you know, being out there talking to students, is a massive, massive, massive gap in how, just professionals all over, not just students, but professionals can leverage the LinkedIn platform to be visible. What are your thoughts on students, should be maximizing their visibility on the platform as they try to land a career or internship?
So again, the word personal brand, some people don't like it. So use it or not, it's really just, what do you want to be known for? If someone is talking about you, how do you want them to introduce you or describe you? And I believe my definition of personal brand is be deliberate about what you want people to say about you or to know about you. And fortunately, in our world, there are some tools that we have to do that. So for example, I think your headline on LinkedIn is the most important professional real estate, because if I'm going to look up this guy, Orlando, who reached out to me, who is this guy? I'm going to go to LinkedIn. And I'm going to see in your headline exactly what you want me to know about you. So a student might say student at University of Connecticut. Okay, but I'd rather see student at University of Connecticut, accounting major, internship at the Big Four. Okay, now I know exactly what you're interested in. Maybe if you're undecided, you put leadership skills or communication and leadership skills or involved in community service, something where I get a little snapshot of who you are. This is the person who, this is the candidate who. We don't want to have to take your whole resume or your whole LinkedIn profile and figure out who you are. I want you to spoon feed it to me because I'm really busy. And so think about in your LinkedIn profile, I like a quick summary statement at the top of resumes. If you're writing an email introducing yourself to a connection, what is that first sentence? Introducing yourself. That's what I mean by personal brand, is what's your little pitch about you so that I understand who I'm talking to. And I think for those who are maybe a little bit older or have had a career change or changed their major, don't talk about what you did in the past. Tell me what you're doing now and what you're interested in. You're making the person's job easier by telling them who you are rather than asking them to figure it out.
I think that's so powerful because maybe the gap in understanding is that we get to control the narrative about us, right? So like you said, we're telling our own quote unquote brand story on this platform to millions of people who may land on the page. When you think about creating content, as we both do, we'll post whether we're speaking or whatever article, some thoughts we want to share. Do you think students should follow that methodology again to create more visibility on their profile, whether it be, a program they participated in, something like almost like vlogging their journey through school and through their career, aspirations?
It's a great question. I don't think that students should worry about creating content for their career unless they want to. Because if I tell you to do it and you don't want to do it, it's not going to be authentic. You're probably not going to be consistent about it, and you won't really know what to do. So if you're an accounting student, you do not need to post on LinkedIn every week about accounting principles and your opinions on accounting unless you want to, and it's a passion of yours and it feels authentic. So to me, if you're willing to do it at least once a week and it's something you like to do it. Otherwise, I don't think it's necessary. Unless you want to go into a career where that is common and required. So if you're going into social media marketing, you probably do want to show that you're passionate about social media marketing, you know how to do it, and you like to do it. But if you're in a field where that's not a common practice or not part of the skill set, I don't think it's something that you need to add to your toolkit just to show that you know how to use social media. What I do think, though, is if you are on LinkedIn, as you should be, and any other site you want to be on, but I think LinkedIn is critical, I do think it's helpful to follow and be an active follower of companies that you want to work for. So when you apply for jobs or you're going to a job fair, click follow on all those companies so that you can consume their content. You can like it if you want, but the most important thing to me is to be a consumer on LinkedIn of the content of the companies that you want to work for or learn more about. What's your opinion on creating content?
Yeah, I'm on the same line. If they're passionate about it and they know that they can be consistent with value add on the platform, go ahead and do it, because I'm of that kind of that Gary V mindset. How do you be omnipresent? But it has to be specific. It can't just be 1 week you're talking about birds, 1 week you're talking about cooking, and then your career. Then it's all over the place. But be specific with that. If folks want to get incredibly, bold, like you said, and following the company they work for and commenting on their post, sharing their thoughts of insight, and if it's of value, again, those little tips like that can create more visibility to your eyeballs, because they're going to, somebody's watching that company page a little bit closely than others, whether it be hiring managers or recruiters or, the marketing team, saying, oh, who's this person that, just shared this comment? That's pretty cool. And you just never know what that can lead to once you apply, or if you're creating organic posts and tagging companies, right? Tagging companies you want to work for. Now that's really, really bold, because you're saying, hey, straight shot, I want to work with Lindsey Pollock. I want to be your videographer. Here's a link to my portfolio. I've seen all your content. I think I can, be a value add to your team, and boom. So those are, I think, are extremely bold moves if students have that kind of excitement and just saying, hey, I'm going to go for the companies I want to go for, and see the outcome of that. Now, will it work? Don't know, but I don't think it'll hurt, as long as you continue to add value on the platform. I think that's the key is value.
I'll give you an example. So I do get requests like, I'd like to be your videographer. I'd like to write blog posts for you. And I'll tell you the difference. There's the generic, I'd like to create content for you that looks like a dear occupant. And then there are people who say, I read your book. Here's something I liked about it. And they actually have done the work, the preparation that you talked about. If you are going to make a bold move, make sure that you have done your homework first.
Love it. Yeah. So what are my goals I'm gonna put out there? When you're out speaking, I'm gonna be an opening act for you one of these days. I'm gonna be an opening speaker for you. So you also talked about internships, which is, again, that's part of my 9 to 5 for co-op programs throughout North America. So talk to the value of that, because there are some students that are I come across that they're like, we're not, I'm going straight to my master's program, and don't want to take a break. I'm like, okay. Talk to the value of having that semester experience, or however many semesters they do, versus their competitor who may just go right through school and then they're applying for the same role.
Look, I think internships are phenomenal. Co-ops, apprenticeships, however you do it, short, long. I love the idea of micro internships are valuable. Again, it's more experience. It's more experimenting. I'd hate to go through 8 years of school and then not like what you come out to do because you've never tried it, right? So think of it as having benefit to building your resume, but it also has benefit to you figuring out whether you really like something. Thank goodness I did an internship in a law firm, because I would be a lawyer today. I hated it and I would have been really unhappy. So I'm really glad that I tried it. So I think use it as experimentation. I do think probably in the 20 plus years since I wrote the first edition of Getting from College to Career, they've become more and more important. I think people assume that you have done internships in college. If you are really busy working in a part-time job or a campus job, I understand that some people can't afford to take on an internship, so do what you can. I think all internships should be paid so that people have the opportunity to get experience and also be paid for it. But I would not just see it as a resume builder. I would see it as a chance to learn whether you like something or not, what you do like about it, what you don't like about it, and gather information through those internships. But it could be a week, it could be 3 days. It doesn't have to be an entire summer or a semester. But I think all experience is good experience if it teaches you what you like and gets you to the next thing.
So we talked about the different strategies, and one of the things I want to circle back to was that communication piece, whether it be via email and stop being a student, be a professional. But you also talked about the upgrade to grown-up contact methods. That feels like a little bit of a gut shot. Like it's time to get on your feet, folks. Like, hey, this is real stuff now. This is the real world.
I see this less and less than I used to. I think people have caught on to this, but it's okay to use your campus given email address. So usually those are appropriate, but be careful of having a cutesy Gmail address. Be careful of, for example, if I'm going to send an email and you're going to write back, make sure that your name is not all in lowercase letters. That reads very young to me. Some people will still leave you a voicemail message. So make sure that you have a professional sounding voicemail message if you are applying for jobs. So basically look at all your contact methods and just say, if a recruiter or a networking contact reached out to me in this way, would I be comfortable with how I'm showing up? Even something like having a silly quotation in the signature line of your Gmail that is not professional, maybe take it down when you're job hunting. You just want to show up as if you're already in the workplace, because that's how people are going to think of you. You want to be authentic, but you also want to play the game that professionals will expect you to be playing.
I love that. So leading right into that would be, you also mentioned like a social media cleanup.
Yeah. So I get this question a lot. I think most people are pretty savvy about keeping their profiles private now, which is definitely the thing you want to do. But go ahead and look at your LinkedIn. Go ahead and look at Google yourself. And if you show up anywhere where anyone could find you that is not private, just make sure you're comfortable with what is showing up. And I'm curious to hear your perspective, but about half of recruiters say, I'm not going to look people up on social media. Why would I do that? And half say, I'm absolutely going to look them up. So to me, you never know which kind of recruiter you're going to get. But interestingly, some recruiters tell me it's not that they're seeing something illegal or inappropriate, but sometimes they'll see a student post something like, I'm so sick of the job hunt process, or another stupid career fair tonight. Sometimes just the negative attitude can be just as damaging as something that might be a little risque. What's your perspective as someone who does this for a living?
Yeah, I would say I haven't done like the Facebook lookup and things like that. Definitely the go-to is LinkedIn, but I've known managers who did the Facebook search or Google search and seen I would say not so flattering photos of potential candidates, whether they're, at a bar, things like that. And what I share with students is you have to understand that you're going to be a representation of that company, regardless of position you hold, right? That receptionist, if they have one, is just as important as the CEO. So you need to making sure, it's that social media spring cleanup, that everything out there, because once it's out there, it's out there. And if you're going into a tech company, they may be doing a deeper search that you're unaware of and can find and extract anything. So be super, super conscious. Either just don't post anything like that, because I get it. You're young, you're having fun, and you just don't know. You're trying to get the likes and the shares, but it can backfire sometimes. It can absolutely backfire, because that becomes your brand, right? We talked about earlier. That becomes your narrative as someone who, yes, you had the college life and you had fun. Now you're trying to put on the suit and tie or blazer and high heels and look the part. And it's like, is this really you? Right? Is this the real person? Because what I see here, I don't know if any folks brought it up in the interview. I don't think that's legal. I'm not sure. Need someone in that from the HR space to speak more to that, but it's definitely where I've noticed in previous employers where they definitely took it into consideration. Like, is this the person we want to see? Especially if it's a role that's client facing, right? They may do one just to know who they're working with, and that will come up.
Well said.
So when it comes to the overarching top three, because you shared a lot in this book, I think everything I'm like, yep, agree 100%. The interview, you can never pretty much over prepare or over prepare for the interview process. That's where communication is going to be super strong for that candidate, for that student. And so, what have you noticed again the gap in their ability to effectively interview?
Preparation is so critical. You can basically guess 3/4 or more of the questions you're going to get in any job interview. You can ask ChatGPT what common questions are. What are your strengths? What are your weaknesses? Why do you want this job? What has led you to this point? Why did you choose your college major? Be prepared and practice the questions that you know you're going to get. If you have a gap in experience in your resume, you're going to be asked about it, so practice your answer. When you're asked, why do you want this job? Have a good answer. When you're asked, do you have any additional questions? Know what additional questions you want to ask based on the research that you've done about the company. So I think people kind of wing it, or they only think about themselves when preparing, when you really want to do just as much work on the company and the job and the role and the function as much as you think about yourself. I think that's number one. Number two is listening. I think people think they have to fill every inch of space in a job interview and talk the entire time. Also show that you're a good listener. Don't interrupt the recruiter. Make sure that if they ask a question, you're really listening for specifics about what they want. And third, I think, is to really say that you want the job, right? Don't play it cool. Say, I'm really excited about this. I'd really be eager to join your company. I think that passion or enthusiasm can be really powerful. Fourth, I would say follow directions. If they say, to come a certain way or to enter through a certain door or, to bring documents, do it. Don't think that you're going to skirt around the rules, kind of play by the basics for sure. And then I think the follow-up is the fifth piece, which is the interview is just one piece of the process. You want to send a thank you note within 24 hours. You want to follow up with a specific that came up in the interview. If someone referred you for the job, you want to thank them and tell them how the interview went. It's sort of like pre-interview, interview, and post-interview are all part of the package. But to me, it's really the preparation and thought that you put in that makes people stand out from those who are just generically interviewing for a job. You want it to be very customized to the particular job itself, whether it's happening on video or whether it's happening in person.
So here's the follow-up.
Yeah.
So how do they prepare without sounding scripted?
I don't mind. I'd rather you were a little scripted and prepared than unprepared. You cannot bring a script. And I would say if you are on video, be careful not to read. The way I prepare as a speaker is bullet points instead of full sentences. So I know that when you ask me about my weaknesses, there are 3 bullet points I want to hit as opposed to memorizing exact sentences. But to me, if 1 or 2 answers sound a little scripted because you're really prepared, I'd rather that than giving an answer that feels unprepared. But to me, bullet points would be my recommendation. How about you? Does it bother you when people sound too scripted?
From what I've noticed, and I've done thousands of interviews, is the ones that are overly scripted can sometimes struggle showing their personality and really get a connection. Because I think a lot of people will tell them to making sure whether they're using the STAR method or the CAR method, right, to be able to answer those questions, have 2 or 3 stories or variations of the story. But the big thing I think too is, which is 100% correct, but it's having that human to human connection. Do I like this person, right? Are they easy to talk to? Do they seem relaxed? And that's probably more of a case by case or, person by person scenario. So I think there should be some coaching around just comfortability, which you shared earlier about if you can do a 5-minute stand-up, then you should be able to crush your interview in just showing who you are, but also maintaining that professionalism and still having effective responses, to those interview questions. So I'm seeing the link, but I've noticed so many times where people seem too stiff. I'm like, just relax. It's just a conversation, not an interrogation, just a conversation.
I'm remembering I had someone who said, somehow they realized that the recruiter had gone to the same place on vacation they had, or something like that. And the recruiter asked her about it. She said, was I supposed to answer? And I was like, yes, if you have something in common and the person brings it up, it's okay to talk about it. You know, like it's not, it's kosher if they bring it up. So I thought that was very funny. You can still connect. You should connect. If they say, how are you? You can say, I'm good. How are you? You can still treat it like a human relationship. That's a really good point.
Yeah, there's nothing wrong if the conversation veers left for 5 minutes and there's some commonality about who you know, town, school, etc., travels and things like that. I think from a recruiter standpoint, you're more bought into that person. Like, oh wow, you know, yeah, they kind of think the same way. You know, their methodology. I think there'll be a good cultural add based on what I've noticed so far. And so that, again, that will shift the conversation to be more relaxed and engaged, to dive deeper. And then you turn that, because the goal too is to turn that recruiter into an advocate for you. So they can turn around to the hiring manager and say, hey, Lindsey, I just spoke with XYZ. I think it's a great person you need to talk to. Let's put them on your calendar for next week at 1:00, whatever it is, right? And so, but having that relaxed demeanor and being able just to show who you are goes a very long way in a conversation, in an interview. Yep. What's one or two points before we land the ship? I want to be mindful of your time. I want to make sure if anyone had any questions from the audience. I see some things coming in. Just a few comments. Okay, awesome. What's one or two nuggets that we didn't talk about that you think they need to know now in 2025 in this current career economy?
I'll talk about one old-fashioned and one new. The new is AI. I get asked about all the time. Figure out how it can work for you. AI is a great tool to expand your thinking about what jobs might excite you. So you might say, hey, here are 5 jobs I'm thinking about. Give me 10 more that are similar to these. Or here are 3 companies I've applied to. What companies have a similar style or culture? So use AI for what it's good at, which is widening your thinking and helping you brainstorm. It doesn't replace the work that you do. It's also really good for you not having to have a blank piece of paper. So it might say, here's my LinkedIn profile, here's Orlando's LinkedIn profile. What are some commonalities that I might mention in an email introduction? And then use that as experience and as research for you. Don't just cut and paste what ChatGPT says, but use it for a background. So those are some thoughts on AI. The older school comment is kind of similar to using AI, which is you don't have to do any of this alone. There is so much help out there. Use it. So if you're an undergrad, if you've already graduated, go to your college career center and ask for help editing your resume, editing cover letters, finding recruiters who specialize in your school or your major, reaching out and networking with alumni. Use that resource. Tap into friends and family, ask them if you can mock interview with them, ask them to look over your resume. On days when you're feeling kind of down or frustrated, reach out for support. Again, I don't want anyone to feel that they are isolated when they're job hunting or that they're the only person in the world who is job hunting. Use the resources around you, one of which is AI, but also human beings.
So on that topic about the resources at colleges, what is your thought on if career services departments, do you think they're providing the most relevant information for the students these days?
I absolutely do. I think students just don't use it because, first of all, not that much has changed about reviewing a resume. And I think they're really good at reviewing resumes. I think they're really good at preparing students for interviews. And most of them are very familiar with LinkedIn and the new tools that are available. And they're very tapped into the recruiters who specialize in recruiting from your campus. And they're very tapped into your alumni network. So if they're not 100% up to date, they're 80%, that's going to be better than nothing. So I think most career centers are very much in tune with what's happening and also are the total experts on students from your university and how they go on to get good jobs. So I think it's always worth a visit or a phone call.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Exhaust those free resources. Well, you pay for them through your education, but absolutely exhaust those resources for sure. Lindsey, I'm so appreciative again of you joining me back here on the Career Talks podcast. Last question for you, and I'm not sure if I asked you this 3 years ago, but what continues to get you up and do what you do every day?
Oh, there's so much I didn't know when I started out that I wish people had told me. So I am just passionate about taking everything that I learn and sharing it so that nobody else has to go through that feeling of not knowing. So anytime I hear a nugget or a tidbit, I just want to share it so I can help other people the way that I needed when I was starting out.
Love it. Share with the folks where they can contact you, consume your content, your books, etc.
Thank you so much. My website is my name, lindseypollock.com, and I am super active on LinkedIn and would be delighted to connect with anybody there.
Thank you. Thank you. And folks, make sure you're connecting with Lindsey. Again, she's a wealth of information. I think the first time I've heard the term at least you stated in one of your books that this might've been a year or so ago, where it was 4 generations actively in the workforce. Now we're at 5. And so you're definitely an expert in this space and how to navigate that, how to work together, how to communicate the differences. I don't think that conversation will never end because it's always evolving for sure. So appreciate you being on the front lines. I appreciate you're like a distant mentee or mentor to me. So always watching your moves and trying to mimic those a bit to get where you are. Any last words for the students, for the parents of the students that can help them, get from career to college, college to career?
Orlando, thank you for the kind words. Thank you for the work that you do. Being out there on the front lines as a recruiter and sharing it with everybody is so invaluable. To students, to parents, to everybody, use the amazing resources like Orlando that are out there. And I wish everybody the best. It's not easy, but there's a lot of support out there. And Orlando, thank you for all that you do and for your support of me and my work.
Thank you, Lindsey. And folks, make sure, again, you tap into Lindsey, and we'll see you next time on the Career Talks podcast.